Okay, Candle 9, you're here and ready to go? Okay. Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you all for joining us today. We appreciate you all taking the time to be here for this important press conference. The purpose of today's event is to address recent developments related to the State Tax Commission's order and to provide clarity on Jackson County's position, our next steps, and the broader implications of this order on our community. Before we dive into the details, I'd like to briefly introduce our speakers for today. County Executive Frank White Jr. will be providing opening remarks and addressing the county's overall stance. County Assessor Gail McCann Beatty, who will walk us through the property assessment process and correct misinformation that has been circulating. Deputy Director of Assessment Maureen Monahan, who can speak on the unprecedented nature of the STC order as former legal counsel for the STC. County Councilor Brian Kavinsky, who will discuss the legal aspects of the STC's order and the county's response. And finally, County Administrator Troy Schulte, who will speak on the financial impacts and the potential effects on our local services. Following remarks from each of our speakers, there will be a brief Q&A. We ask that reporters hold their questions until the end, and we will take them in an orderly fashion. With that, I'll turn the floor over now to County Executive Frank White Jr.
Thank you, Marciana, and thank you all for coming this morning. The property tax issue is complicated, and it's important to be transparent in this process, and it is of the utmost importance that we are. I understand the confusion and frustration of our residents as it pertains to this issue. There have been many false statements, been many unethical maneuvers surrounding this issue. The Attorney General of Missouri, Andrew Bailey, has used his office for a political gain. His lawsuit against Jackson County as it relates to property tax was nothing more than a political ploy from the very beginning. Attorney General Bailey's lawsuit was filed the same time the Missouri Supreme Court issued a unanimous decision in Jackson County's favor on nearly the identical issues raised by Attorney General Bailey's office. Attorney General Bailey's own designated expert witness, Preston Smith, publicly stated that the lawsuit was filed for political reasons, and himself criticized Attorney Bailey for failing to prove his case. Attorney General Bailey dismissed a case that he himself called the most important in the history of his office. Let's not forget, Attorney General Bailey dismissed the lawsuit the day after his election because he was afraid to answer questions under oath. He knew he was losing this case. This is not the first time the Attorney General's office has been used for political reasons that tend to confuse and mislead our taxpayers at someone else's expense. This is not how we should be running our business. We need to focus on what's best for the people of Jackson County. So with this, I will introduce our County Assessor, Gail McCann Beatty.
Thank you, County Executive. First, I want to take a moment just to to refresh you all on our assessment process. The process involves evaluating properties based on market value, which is determined through detailed analysis of real estate data, including recent sales, property conditions, and neighborhood trends. We have had significant increases in home values across Jackson County. As a result, property values have risen sharply because of a strong real estate market. While this can be good news for homeowners who wish to sell, it also means that property assessments need to keep pace with these changes to ensure fairness. We've implemented several measures to ensure accuracy to these valuations. We're also committed to transparency so that residents can see how the property values are determined and understand the factors that go into these assessments. As you know, property values in Jackson County have been significantly undervalued for decades. Our priority has been focused on correcting these long-standing inequities. We recognize this process has not been easy, but it must be done. Because this system has favored those with influence and wealth, often leaving working families and communities of color at a disadvantage. These groups will subsidize the taxes of those properties that are undervalued. When this happens, this doesn't mean that our taxing jurisdictions just lose that money. Instead, it means that others, often who can least afford it, have to pay more to make up the difference. They are likely to see an even greater increase in their taxes. This is why it is so important that assessments are accurate and reflect market value. We have to ensure that all properties are assessed based on their true market value, which is crucial for creating a fair and just tax system. This isn't just about correcting numbers. It's about making sure that everyone pays their fair share in Jackson County. And with that, I'm going to bring up Maureen Monahan, our Deputy Director.
Good morning. I was former Chief Counsel for the State Tax Commission, and so I've been asked to speak about the State Tax Commission and their role in this process. The State Tax Commission is to ensure the county's values are at market and that they're fair, equitable, and uniform. They do this in a variety of ways. Prior to the reassessment, they provide guidance and oversight by coming to the counties and reviewing our processes and our procedures. After reassessment, they test our values. They conduct ratio studies. And it's only after they conduct those ratio studies in the past has the State Tax Commission taken any action or offer suggestions for valuation on the next reassessment cycle. The order issued by the State Tax Commission is concerning for several reasons. First of all, it doesn't make Jackson County's values in compliance with the law. It doesn't make them fair and equitable. It in fact has quite the opposite effect. The order does not resolve any issues they claim to address. The order contradicts the procedures and policies of the State Tax Commission. The State Tax Commission has never issued a retroactive assessment because they know the detrimental impact it has on the schools, the cities, the fire districts, the libraries, the blind. Furthermore, the order they issued was in secret, without a public hearing, without evidence, without conducting ratio studies. Jackson County has continued their process and procedures in the open with public meetings and public hearings.
Good morning. Brian Javinsky, the County Counselor for Jackson County. To reiterate what Maureen Monahan just told you is similar to what I have to say to you today, because what we've looked at as we do the legal review from the State Tax Commission, they've never gone backwards and tried to issue an order. It's an administrative hearing agency. They're trying to go backwards, and at this point, it would affect all the political subdivisions of the county, the cities, the school districts, who get 65% of what we get from the tax assessments goes to the school districts. 17% goes to the cities, and then the rest go to community college and other areas. This was all done a year ago, in 23. That means, as Maureen laid out for you, they had the opportunity at that time in '23, if they had an issue with anything we had done with assessment, to let us know at that time. They didn't. They approved the maintenance plan. They approved the numbers in '23, and they know that. And that's why they came forward with their writ of mandamus to the Attorney General's office. And the Attorney General files that in December, before taxes are paid, makes multiple public comments about the illegality of the assessment department and how we did things. And then they came into court, and we've had 3 days of testimony. 3 days already. They had finished their case, putting forward their information, including depositions of these 2 state tax commissioners who just made this ruling retroactive that's never been done before. And they said, and they provided testimony even in the case. And they said there was nothing they had. It was all based on social media, just as the county executive said. That's what they were basing their whole case on, was the social media. And it wasn't working. They knew they were losing. Their lead attorney had to withdraw from the case after 3 days of testimony. The only day left was last Friday. That was the day we were going to get our opportunity to just put forward our case, which they hadn't even made their case at that point, and they knew that. And so all of a sudden they come up with this, we'll just do the State Tax Commission, make this order 9 months after the petition was filed in this case. 9 months after the taxes were paid by the taxpayers. Well before that, there was already the administrative, or the budgets were made by the political subdivisions, by the cities, the school districts, and everyone. Right now, they're about to do the next year's levies set for how much taxes are to be paid. All that's getting done right now. They're a year behind. They knew it. And that's why they came up with this order, because they knew they were going to lose the case. It was pretty clear if you had watched the case, and we hadn't even had a chance to say anything. It's consistent with what had happened previously in 2019, when there was attention given to the way we did it and how the assessment department went through the process of assessing the property values in Jackson County. All those cases were dismissed because they followed the statutes on those matters. So what we're going to do right now is the county, representing Jackson County, will work with the political subdivisions, with the school districts, with the cities, and we're going to determine what way is the best way to legally challenge this action that they've taken the other day. It's unconstitutional, it's unprecedented, and it has no evidence to even prove it. So we're going to go forward the best way we can to figure out what the legal challenge will be, but we're going to be working with the subdivisions that have actually been harmed by this decision that's done retroactively. That will affect the future of their budgets as well. That's coming up to be made at the end of September. At this point, I'll turn it over to Troy Schulte, our county administrator.
Thank you, Brian. I think it goes without saying, this conversation about potential litigation and unresolved litigation, legal issues, concerns over our assessment process date back to 2019. By last count, I think we are 7 for 7 or 8 for 8 in terms of court challenges and results in our favor. So I think some credit needs to be done for the great work of our counselor's office. This has been a 5-year process with obviously some more time to go. I wanted to touch a little bit on the practical realities of the State Tax Commission order, and as it gets ready to, as the taxing jurisdictions in Jackson County get ready to set levies and try to figure out the ramifications of the recent State Tax Commission order. If we are forced to comply with this order, as written, we can face substantial cuts to essential services. This includes vital areas like our schools, fire protection, and police departments. I'll give you a case in point. If you look at a school district budget, if you look at a police department budget, you look at a fire district's budget, 90% of the costs are people. So these are going to have real ramifications on teachers, firefighters, those types of programs as we go forward. So one of the issues that we have to do is figure out how would the districts, how would the political subdivisions, the taxing jurisdictions deal with it. And first of all, under the Missouri Constitution, property values and tax rates are tied together. So if property values go up, which they've done in the last few years, as stated by the county assessor, property values have gone up significantly in Jackson County. What has happened to the tax rates? To offset it, because of a thing called the Hancock Amendment, those rates have gone down, so that most people didn't see huge tax increases because of the valuation change. Jackson County cut its tax rate. Nearly every other subdivision in the county, cut its tax rate correspondingly. Now, there's a limit to how much you can capture under the Hancock Amendment. You're allowed the consumer price index, basically the inflation, plus new construction. So there was a cap on how much gain you were able to capture due to reassessment. Again, so people had to adjust their rates, of course, correspondingly down to adjust it. Now, what happens if we imply the State Tax Commission's order and we reset the values for 23? Keep in mind the 23 values have already been spent. Those budget dollars have been collected. It's about $118 million of revenue that was collected and distributed out to the taxing jurisdictions. Has been spent on teachers, it's been spent on firefighters, it's been spent on prosecutors, in the case of the county, and corrections officer. That money is spent. Now we're getting ready to do 24, and the State Tax Commission comes in and says, we're going to reset your values to 23. I think it was pointed out by our legislators last week, there's no way to refund that money. That money's been spent. There's no way to get a credit. That money has already been spent. So the way the taxing jurisdictions would have to do it is something called a recoupment levy, which they're allowed to do in even-numbered years following reassessment, which means they can adjust the values back up to offset declines in assessment. So if I'm a taxing jurisdiction and I'm faced with a significant reduction because of the State Tax Commission order, the first thing I'm going to go to my elected officials and say, I need to roll the levies right back up. And I'm going to roll them up as far as I can, because the state constitution says, unlike when values are increasing, the state constitution says when values are declining, you're entitled to revenue neutrality, which means I can collect everything that I had budgeted and was supposed to collect. And that's the issue they'll do. So they'll do it for 24, which those values have to be, those rates have to be set for by basically the 1st of October. And again, if I've got the taxing capacity, I'm going to do it for 23. Because if I have to give a credit, I got to collect the revenue to give it back. So there's the issue, is what you're looking at is potentially the largest tax increases because of the State Tax Commission order in the history of Jackson County, albeit anywhere in the state of Missouri in its history. So I want to disabuse people that they're going to get some lovely refund check because of this egregious error by the county. It's not going to happen, and in most cases, you're going to pay a lot more. Now, here's the reality. Most of us operate with home mortgages. That mortgage company is based in New York, Los Angeles, Dallas. They're not going to know the intricacies of what's going on in Jackson County. So they're going to get that potentially double tax bill. They're going to pay it out of your escrow in 24, and they're going to reset that escrow payment, assuming that's the new permanent base going forward. So this has long-term ramifications if we're allowed to implement this stuff. So this is $118 million that will be recovered somewhere, and because the primary source of revenue for most taxing jurisdictions is property tax, if values decrease, the rates will go back up to collect the same amount of money they had before. So that's the impact. I want to disabuse people. The media can help us that there's going to be tax relief coming. What you're going to do is you're going to see some people that had large increases will pay slightly less, but it'll be offset by people who maybe didn't see as large of a tax increase paying significantly more. And that's the reality we're going to deal with over the next couple of months unless we can find a solution to this. So I just wanted to kind of touch on the financial realities of how this works. There is no free lunch in local government, so the bills have to be paid some way, somehow, and that's what you'll see is as values are forced to decline because of the action of the State Tax Commission, the taxing jurisdictions, to the extent of their ability, will offset it by raising the rates so that the tax collections are the same. And for most people, if some people are who saw large increases in their value, don't get as large an increase, they got to get it from the people who didn't have as large of an increase, so the vast majority of people would pay more under this structure. So I think it's important that we, as mentioned, will work with the taxing jurisdictions. We'll work collaboratively trying to find a solution because it affects 57 taxing jurisdictions within Jackson County. Everybody's impacted. Obviously, we think this has been going on for 5 years. We think if there had been an issue, they'd have found it by now. So the fact of the matter is we're going to continue to proceed. We think we're doing it the right way. It's painful, but it's been broken for a long time. It's got to be fixed sooner rather than later. So that's been our approach. You can help us get the word out, but I wanted to quickly disabuse everybody that there was going to be some tax relief coming. It's not coming. With that in mind, with that piece of good news, I'll transition it back to the county executive who can wrap things up.
Thank you all for your comments this morning. In closing, I just want to say that the county continues to be committed to fairness and equity. It's just not our legal duty, but it's also our moral duty to do this. The issue of unequal property assessments, as stated by our county assessor, has long been a critical concern. And research shows it has particularly had a disproportionate impact on black and brown communities. We will continue to do our jobs. We will continue to uphold the law, and regardless of political games, I'm asking elected officials, I'm asking community leaders to carefully consider the implications of the State Tax Commission before making public comments. This is a critical time in Jackson County because of this order. We need unity and responsible leadership in navigating this complex issue. So in closing, we understand the importance of keeping residents informed, and we need to promise to provide updates when we can during this process. So I, as county executive, I do commit to being transparent and making sure that our residents are kept informed as to what's going on with this process. As Troy said, it's unprecedented, and no one's been here before, so we just have to get together and get our taxing jurisdictions on board, let them understand what the ramifications are of this order, and hopefully we can pull it all together and get back to as normal as we can get. But it's unsettling that issues like this become highly political. And I don't think that when politicians are making these decisions, that they understand the ramifications on our taxpayers. And I don't know if they even care. But as county executive, I care. And I'm going to do everything that I can to make sure that our residents get a fair and equal decision in this matter. I really believe that it means a lot to me to do this right, and I think I've got the people behind me that are committed to doing it right. And as Brian said, a lot of lawsuits have been filed against us on property tax, but we prevailed in each one. I think we're on the right track. I think we're doing it right, and I think this is a matter of just getting everyone to understand where we are and support us in moving this forward and report this as it really was. And it was just a political ploy by the Attorney General. And then after the election, he said, okay, it's dismissed. We've been here before. And that office has been used in that fashion before. So with that, thank you all for coming. We are available for questions. I'll turn it back over to Marshana. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. I was able to get a list of everybody's names who are here, so I'll just call out a name. Feel free to ask your question, and we'll try to get your question answered by the appropriate person who's there. So I'm just going to go down the list of how I took names when I came in here, so no favor to anyone at this time. Joe with Spectrum News, do you have a question?
Where do we go from here? What's the next step? What's the next plan?
Brian, you want to answer that?
What you have?
As I said earlier, we're going to be reviewing what our legal challenges, possibilities are. It just came out Wednesday or Thursday, and so we have meetings with the school districts, the cities, the community college, everyone that's affected by this matter, and we're going to talk about what direct legal challenges we can take, or if we just need to do a direct appeal ourselves through the process, and that would be in Jeff City. But we're going to look at it all.
Mike with the Kansas City Star.
Well, go back on the legal challenge. I know you're looking at all these options. What options are there so far that have been presented? What's on your list?
Sure. Well, I mean, it was done without any evidence. And if you look at the minutes, they did it at a closed session, which is what they were supposed to be doing as a group, so they shouldn't be in a closed session in the first place. We couldn't see anything that they had done or presented to take this position. If they used the expert testimony that was done at the trial, he admitted himself they didn't prove their case. That's the only information we've had from them. Those state tax commission, we took their depositions, they had nothing. So there's a writ of prohibition that could be done. The school districts could file that against the county, and then we would have to make them the SDC a necessary party to defend it.
What's a writ of prohibition?
Just preventing it from occurring, an injunction, so to speak. It's the same. And so they could do it that way. There's a direct appeal process that we'd have to go to Jeff City for that we could also take, that we have time to get that together. But again, we want to talk to the school districts, everyone affected by this, to make sure we do it together, because that's who's being affected by this. And we want to make sure we listen to them and we try to find the right way to go forward with the county and with those people affected.
Well, the legislature this afternoon is going to look at the possibility of trying to block the county councilor's office from taking any action without permission from them. If they were successful, they said no, then the taxing districts could, on their own, get together and challenge this guy.
That's two-parter, so I'll say it's a legislative intent that they have, and it's against the charter for what they're trying to do. And obviously, because of the ethical violations that the Attorney General was facing, if you look at the State Tax Commission order, the legislator's not listed as a party in this. And if you look at the county charter, if they're not a party to it, they have no say in it of how we move forward with it. And then again, it's the civil litigation practice of our county. So, does that answer your question?
Well, the other part was, just take the county out of it. Couldn't the taxing districts, as a group, get together and challenge?
Absolutely. And so if we just blindly accepted what the SDC did, we leave the county open and exposure to lawsuits as well. That's correct.
Allison Kite with the Missouri Independent.
This is probably for Brian or maybe Maureen.
Okay.
The Attorney General talked about the evidence for the STC order coming from his lawsuit against the county. You mentioned they issued this order without any evidence. Do you have any idea what information the STC was or wasn't working with?
That's what I was, again, what I said earlier, if they use the expert admitted even on the stand that he had no assessment experience. He also admitted that the assessed values were market value, which is exactly what the assessment department has been working towards. So we didn't think his expert testimony did anything to help them. And as I said, there was one day left in this trial, and it was for us to put on our case. And that was Wednesday when they dismissed it. And then they dismissed it with prejudice, which means they can't bring it forward anyways. So if we just ignored it, which is we're not going to do, but if we just ignored the SDC order, they couldn't enforce it by the Attorney General because they just agreed with the SDC not to bring forward a case again. They dismissed it with prejudice. They knew they didn't make the case. Does that answer your question? Okay.
So Lisa Kalanko, KCUR.
Yeah, how much would a legal challenge, if you pursue that, how much would that cost the county? And would you look at taxing jurisdictions or like municipalities to contribute to, paying for that?
Either you or Troy.
We would probably, our approach would be to use in-house legal counsel, basically our county counselor's office, so it's a question of priorities. When you focus on this, there's other things that we don't get worked on, but they've got a pretty good track record. I think they're 7 for 7 or 8 for 8, so I'd put good money on our county counselor's office being able to resolve it. If it got escalated where there was an appeal process, my sense, we would probably get willing partners by school districts or other taxing jurisdictions to participate legally, but at this point, we've been successful with our own in-house staff.
Angie, KCTV.
This would be from Mr. Kavinsky.
Okay.
When you're talking about filing, where do you plan to file? When you say in Jefferson City, you're going to bring this to the Missouri Supreme Court? Or do you plan to also follow the STC order and fight it at the same time? In this sense, we provide over the list of 15%, the parcels that come about 15%.
Well, we've been working the normal process, and we're going to continue with the normal process if we think this STC order is unenforceable, which our position is that it is. Since the lawsuit, the SDC has asked for hearings, residential hearings. We've been present at all of those, and that started in March, and it was once a week. We did 75 or 100 cases. We had multiple cases being stipulated to, and then the SDC wouldn't sign off on it at that time. I'm assuming it's because of the lawsuit that was pending. So as far as where we would go, we would follow the statutes that apply in this matter to appeal an administrative order, and so it would be in the Circuit Court of Jeff City, I believe. So.
And then in the meantime, will you also be turning over that information? I'm saying you're going to be doing both avenues at the same time, or do you not plan to comply at all with the STC? Because part of it was they wanted information. They were like, you figure out how to do this, but they ordered within 30 days. They wanted information on the parcels that went above 15%. Will you provide that information?
I didn't read it that way, so we'll certainly take a look at it. I didn't see them asking for information on that matter. In fact, it's just you guys need to do this, this, and this. They made a number of allegations in there of 75%. Not 75% of the residents even appealed their cases. So how is that even proper? There's multiple comments in there that need some explanation, and they're the ones that need to explain their case. They haven't done it, nor did they do it in the trial. So that's why they, I guess, tried to do an end around and just create chaos for the people and taxpayers of Jackson County.
Have you reached out to them yet, or you just?
We're planning on it. Again, we're processing everything as we speak. I'm going to work with the subdivisions that are being affected by this, and then we'll move forward with the legal challenges that we think are necessary.
Kelly Peltier, Fox 4. You have a question? Okay. Abby Dodge, KSHB.
I wanted to piggyback off on Angie's, so Brian, if you don't mind stepping up. Just a quick yes or no, are you guys planning on following the STC order while you also pursue these legal challenges?
Not at this time. We're moving forward with the assessment process as we have in the appeal process. And as Gail and Maureen have said all along, if a taxpayer thought their case was overcharged, then they needed to follow the appeal process, and that's what they should have done. And that's the important part. And we're still meeting. We're still doing Board of Equalization hearings, and we expect the STC to continue to hear the cases as well. That's what their job is, to follow the appeal, to listen to the appeals. That's what it says. And again, they did this blanket statement. They're not even following the Constitution that says they're supposed to listen to appeals and hear appeals on these matters.
And then a follow-up for Gail, if you don't mind, Gail. Why are you confident that what you all did was accurate and correct?
We've done many things, put many things in place in order to do that. I think the big controversy is over what is a physical inspection. What we call a parcel-by-parcel view is the very definition of a physical inspection that was done on every parcel in the county, not just those that may have increased over 15%.
And when you say physical inspection, just showing up at the home, exterior, walk around, that sort of thing?
Correct.
Joe RC, do you have a question? Okay.
Frank, you talked earlier,
Sure, gotcha.
you mentioned
earlier that you're going to be reaching out. Will you be reaching out to the mayors of the cities that are affected by this, and also going to be reaching out to the county legislatures as well, and maybe teaming up with them to help you resolve this issue?
Well, it would be really nice if we could work with the legislature to resolve this issue. I think that's always better when your elected officials working together on something that's important. We will be reaching out to the superintendents of all of our municipalities and also some of the mayors, yes.
Why is that so important to do that?
Because I think just showing unity in this issue, I think everyone, if they sit back and they take a look at everybody that's actually affected, then they will see the importance of having unity and trying to speak in one voice and trying to get it done. The difficult thing in this whole deal is how do you take politics out of it? You know, if you just look at pure business, it would be like, okay, everyone's working together. We see the harm here. We see how we should go about trying to get it taken care of. But you know, politics is politics, so we have to do some navigating there also. But the stronger the administration and the stronger the legislature in this area, the better and faster we can get to a conclusion.
Finally, residents are really concerned about this. Property. They're nervous, and you're nervous, and about that.
Yes.
You're nervous about this. But there has to be a solution of it now.
Well, it's not. I think Brian is following the right track in terms of coming to a conclusion or a solution. I think I think we're in the same boat as the residents and the taxpayers. Is this something that's never happened before? So we're trying to figure it out too. We're trying to navigate it. Our county councilors are involved with trying to understand what it says and what approach we should take. And so that's kind of where we are right now. I don't think anyone has an answer like Troy mentioned. I know a lot of people are talking about refunds and things like that, but we're just not at that point right now. And I think Troy explained that pretty good.
Finally, what is your message to taxpayers?
The message is just follow the county website. We want to communicate with them as much as we can, as often as we can, to try to find out. As we learn something, we want them to learn. But this is going to take patience. This is going to take patience on everyone's part until we figure out exactly what it is that we're dealing with. And the State Tax Commission, they have to look at what the order that they brought down and what that's going to mean, and what kind of implications that's going to have. Because we're talking about Jackson County. I mean, next it could be St. Louis County. It could be, so you want to have confidence in your State Tax Commission that they're doing what's in the best interest of all of our taxpayers, and that's what I'm hoping for right there.
Just a few more. Tom with the voice.
Hey, so you said something about October 1st being about when the schools will start putting forward their new budgets. So is there kind of a ticking clock, and did it resolve this, for example, October 1st?
Yeah, taxing jurisdictions are again required by state law to have their levies set for calendar year 24 by the 1st of October. So we've got about a 6-week window in here. Otherwise, the taxing jurisdictions are going to will probably assume the worst and will adjust the levies up accordingly. So it would be, at least that's what I would recommend. If in doubt, I'm going to pull the levies back up because I may have to deal with a significantly reduced valuation issue. My first and foremost position would be to protect those taxing jurisdictions, and that's what each one of those people are going to do. So if this isn't resolved quickly, my sense is you'll start to see significantly higher levies because people are going to start to hit, and that's going to affect those. So that's going to affect pretty much everybody, unless you're one of those ones that had a 200 or 300%. There weren't a lot of those, but those are the ones that were significantly undervalued. And if those, that's just a heck of that'll be a break for them at the expense of everybody else. But 6 weeks is our deadline.
Mike Janae, the Independence Examiner. You have any questions?
Follow with Troy on this. Do you see, going on this timeline, do you see any way where these tax jurisdictions are resolved or made whole and the taxpayers don't get a big hit, as you were
No, the taxing jurisdictions are going to figure out a way to, because property taxes for the vast majority of cities, where taxing is the primary source of revenue. So if they don't get it through property values, they're going to get it through property tax rates. They're going to adjust it up. So I don't see a scenario where taxpayers don't get hit significantly as a result of this issue.
Last but not least, Andy with KMBC.
Appreciate it. I guess for the county executive, sir, you talked about this process being political. In particular, you pointed at the Attorney General, and there was also talk about this is unprecedented from the Tax Commission, but what is also unprecedented is more than 50,000 appeals from people that live in this county. They don't think it's political. They're looking at these, their assessments and saying that this is way over the top. So, you know, what do you say to those folks that are saying, you know, that, I mean, and anecdotally, we've heard from all of us here in this room, we've heard from people all over this county. Some cases double, triple, even quadruple what, you know, they previously had been talked about for, you know, their valuations. What do you say to those people?
Well, I'm really concerned about everyone when it comes to paying taxes. No one really likes to pay taxes, but I think that what Troy explained about the process kind of speaks pretty clear. Gail kind of showed you how this process works. I know there were over 54,000 appeals. I think we had maybe over 15,000 that didn't show, and we're still having those who filed appeals that did show. But the reason I think we won these cases that we won is because the taxpayers didn't actually go through the actual appeals process. So when we got the Missouri Supreme Court ruling, it pretty much stated that until you exhaust all your appeal processes, then it's hard to sue. So that's the remedy for property tax, is going through the appeals process. So if we don't go through the appeals process, then we don't know where we are. So when you get that first valuation, then that number is going to change. It's going to change as you go through the process, but you have to go through the process. It's been there for years. And that's the only thing that I can do is make sure that there is a process for the taxpayers to go through.
You also mentioned that you said that this disproportionately affects black and brown communities.
Yes.
Deron McGee last week with the legislature said they're the ones that are being hit hard right now by a lot of the people that live in black and brown communities. They can't afford to get an appraiser in there. They don't have time because they work to go through this process. He said, and I'm quoting here, he said Frank White is the one that is hurting black and brown communities with this process. What's your response to that?
Well, that is political statement. Frank White's hurting folks. That's not accurate. I think research shows that it is disproportionate for black and brown communities. I think that is where we deal with. We're talking about fairness. We're talking about we got some people that are paying more than their fair share, and we got some people that are paying less than their fair share. So the person who's paying more than their fair share is they made up by the one paying less than their fair share. So we're trying to be equitable. We're trying to make sure that it's fair for everyone. And I think if you get inside the numbers and the research, then I think you'll agree with me. And I've got. If you need more explanation, I got Gail that can follow up.
I did want to ask Gail specifically because of this tax commission ruling. You know, you mentioned a little bit about, you know, what constitutes actually going out and looking at the property. I mean, a physical inspection. It's one thing, obviously, to walk around the property. It's something else to go inside and see if there might be issues or whatever. But that commission ruling also said, by law, you're supposed to give written notice to everybody that had a 15% increase or more. They say that simply didn't happen. We certainly talked to people, again, anecdotally, that have said, we didn't get any notice. We didn't get any, you know, we didn't know how much our bill was going to be. We didn't know what our valuation was going to be until after the fact, and now, you know, we're in a really tough spot. I want to ask you about that, too, and I also want to ask about Tyler Technologies, because they've been involved in this process here the last several times. Do you still have confidence in that company? Are they going to do this in 2025? And what's your response to what the tax commission said about you not following the law?
Obviously, I disagree with the tax commission. Notices were sent We can provide copies of their notices. There is nothing in the statute that gives the exact language of what that notice has, and it would have been up to the State Tax Commission if they wanted specific language to have let us know that they wanted specific language in there, but the notices were absolutely sent. We also even extended the deadline to file appeals an additional 3 weeks, which actually gave people more time to file than the actual statutes would allow. A quick comment about the number of appeals. What that number of appeals speaks to is just how off our values have been over the last few decades. And out of that 54,000, which is 18% of our total parcels that were filed, over 43,000 of those have been resolved, most of which were resolved via stipulation, which means the property owners agreed to it outside of a decision from the BOE. In previous years, Jackson County only had 3,000 to 4,000 appeals. That number in itself speaks to how off our values have been. If you look at St. Louis County, 40,000 to 50,000 appeals for St. Louis County is normal. And that should be, our new normal should be probably 25,000 appeals. That should be normal for us if we are actually doing our job.
And so you still have more than 10,000 appeals pending from last year?
Correct, but most of those have either set up meetings on their own and didn't show, or we have scheduled them meetings and they haven't shown up, or they were scheduled with the board and the board called them and they didn't respond to that. That's what most of the remaining appeals are.
I want to ask about Tyler Technologies. That was another part of my question, because this is a company that has been sued by lots of different jurisdictions all around the country for failures. And a lot of people feel like they failed in this process. What would be your response to that? And are you going to use these folks again for the next value?
So first of all, I don't agree that they failed. I agree that there were some challenges, not totally on Tyler. Hiring as fast as we wanted to, both from the county's perspective and Tyler for our data collectors, was one of those challenges. Tyler is a nationwide company. They are leaders in the industry. We went through a bid process. There were 11 bidders. They were amongst the 3 top. And go to IBM, go to Microsoft, go to any other major corporation out there, how many times have they been sued? That is the nature of this industry. And I still have faith in Tyler, and we have about 8, 9 more months with them, and then it's our intent that the county will then take over this process completely on our own.
Gail, did you want to ask about the question about the black and brown communities? Is there
Oh, I forgot to answer that. So here's what typically happens. In our minority communities, property values don't tend to increase as fast. But in our communities, say along Ward Parkway or Lee Summit, they tend to appreciate much faster. If you lower everyone down to 15%, our black and brown communities are going to be much closer to market value, whereas our Ward Parkway corridor, our Lee Summit area is going to get reduced back down to that 15%. That means our low-income people, our minority communities, are going to be subsidizing these other communities.
But aren't they, I mean, they've also seen very significant increases, correct? I mean, because a lot of people, they can't afford to live in these places anymore. We've heard that repeatedly.
Again, it speaks to how badly our values were in the first place. And if you have noticed, no one has filed anything related to property value. Everyone has been talking percentage. My job is market value.
Thanks, Gail. All right, thank you all for being here today. I'll be sending out a couple of documents. I know some people don't have a copy of the STC order, and then there is a legal memo that has been prepared by the county counselor's office in regard to the resolution that the legislature has filed as well. So I'll be sending out those documents as soon as I can get back to my computer. And if you have any other questions,